samurai, masters of the sword and bow, men of history and legend. These fierce warriors were as much feared for their skills in battle as respected for their adherence to ethics and honor. Their feats of daring were known across the world. The samurai became larger-than-life legends, battling monsters, spirits, and demons. But among these heroes, one samurai captured the hearts and minds of children and adults above all others because, according to legend, he single-handedly saved all of Japan. He is the sword saint, Takezo Kensei. The year was 1671, during Japan's Edo or Tokugawa period.
The Edo period marks one of Japan's most prosperous periods. Up until now, war, fighting had all ended. It was a time of development and enlightenment.
Japan became isolationist, closing off its borders to all foreigners except China, Korea, and the East India Trade Company. Only a bare minimum of imports and exports were allowed. The country's stance was so rigid that unauthorized visitors were to be executed rather than deported. Japan had effectively shut out the rest of the world, but they never suspected that the true threat would come not from outside their borders, but from within. The warlord known only as Whitebeard took advantage of the peace and quickly swept across much of Japan. His forces were said to have numbered as many as 70,000 strong.
Whitebeard crushed any resistance he met. Cities destroyed. Entire villages were put to death. It was said that even the mention of his name would cause villages to desert. The country had gone from its most peaceful period to its most bloody.
Whitebeard set his sights on Otsu, a tiny farm village, seemingly insignificant. But Whitebeard knew if he captured Otsu, so close to Kyoto, he could use it as his staging ground. From it, he could attack any city in Japan. He would be unstoppable. Otsu did indeed become a pivotal battle for Whitebeard, but not how he suspected.
Expecting easy victory, Whitebeard's troops marched straight into Otsu. He was so confident about overrunning this peaceful little town that Whitebeard led the march personally, bringing only a small company of men.
This would prove to be his fatal mistake, for it was there that Whitebeard first encountered Takezo Kensei, in what became known as the Battle of 12 Swords. Kensei defeated Whitebeard and all of his men single-handedly. It was a decisive battle for both men. It marked the birth of a hero and the turning point for the warmonger. Kensei saved the people of Otsu. Whitebeard, barely escaping with his life, had tasted his first defeat.
Kensei knew that if Japan were to survive, he would have to stop Whitebeard. Whitebeard proved his wiles, though. Despite his large forces, he kept the location of his camp a closely guarded secret. No one can fight what they can't find. This base became known as the Hidden Fortress.
To find this hidden fortress, Kensei followed a deadly path strewn with peril. This circuitous journey, fraught with adventure and mischief, would become known as the Trials of Takezo Kensei. The year was 1671. Whitebeard, a ferocious warlord, had conquered half of Japan. A single warrior stood in his way. Takezo Kensei. Kensei had already done the unthinkable. By himself, he had defeated Whitebeard and his best men in the town of Otsu. Kensei now had to find Whitebeard's secret stronghold to end his threat once and for all. This quest would become known as the Trials of Kensei. His first task would be to find the Fire Scroll.
The Fire Scroll is said to have contained many of Whitebeard's strategies and secrets, including clues to the location of his secret camp, known as the Hidden Fortress.
Some claim that Whitebeard had bargained with Oni, or devils, to keep the scroll safe within a circle of flame. While supernatural deals may not have actually occurred, what is known is that Whitebeard made a practice of torturing spies and traitors by burning them alive.
A thief attempting to steal the scroll was captured. As punishment, Whitebeard not only burned the thief alive, but his village and all of its inhabitants as well. The parchment was forever known afterwards as the Fire Scroll.
To get to the scroll, Kensei had to face yet another trial, the 90 Ronin. Once again, our hero alone would face overwhelming odds.
His numbers were the source of his military power. Legend has it that Whitebeard was so fearful his encampment would be found, he picked 90 of his most cruel men and tasked them with the protection of the scroll.
Some say they were cannibals who ate anyone they saw, and anyone who dared to steal the scroll, they ate alive.
The stories tell that Kensei killed all 90 Ronin. But could one man really defeat 90 bloodthirsty killers?
It's difficult to extract truth from fiction. The number of the scroll's guardians changes. Sometimes it's 90 Ronin, other times it's 900. Another version claims it was not 90 Ronin, but 90 devils.
What we do know is that the Fire Scroll existed, and that Kensei faced an army to get it. The Fire Scroll led Kensei to his next two trials, climbing the frozen waterfall, and then finding the single crimson peony. While these quests were seen as feats challenging his ingenuity, Kensei's future tasks would prove far more deadly. The year is 1671. Takezo Kensei, Japan's greatest samurai, has begun his search for the hidden forces of the warlord known as Whitebeard. Having defeated the 90 Ronin, he faced his next legendary trial.
Takezo Kensei, our hero, determined and undaunted, must find a piece of the missing map to locate the hidden fortress. And because Whitebeard is such a crafty one, it's guarded by the black bear of Sakashita.
Depending on the source, the bear changes in description from 10 to 30 feet tall. In some versions, it breathes fire like a dragon. In others, the bear is a living shadow, incapable of being cut with a sword. But in every version, Kensei emerges the victor, defeating the bear and taking from him the missing map. Having defeated the black bear, Kensei finally had the location of Whitebeard's hidden fortress. But his road to it offered one last danger, Kensei's most romantic trial, overcoming the Snake Women's charm.
Probably the only kind thing that can be said about Whitebeard is that he was an equal opportunity warlord, happy to hire female assassins. Now, the Snake Women were twin sisters, said to be beautiful beyond measure, but they were also vicious and without conscience, known for killing their foes with serpent venom, so they became known as the Snake Women.
Most versions of the trial describe them as half human, half snake, the product of a deviant tryst. They could change into giant serpents and make snakes do their evil bidding. Kensei's blade might cut them, but every piece would turn into a snake that slithered away. In the end, they escaped Kensei with their lives. Now, with the sweat of so many trials on his brow, Kensei, exhausted, battered, finally reached his ultimate goal, the hidden fortress, where all of Whitebeard's forces had gathered.
Whitebeard's army seemed unstoppable. Their numbers are listed anywhere from 70,000 to 200,000. By any account, they were easily the largest army in Japan.
The stakes were high. Whitebeard had already conquered half of Japan. Now he was poised to take over the rest. Kensei knew that if he did not stop this unstoppable warlord, there would be no hope left. Japan would be lost. It was a battle unlike any other. A lone warrior against an army. But as we've seen, this was no ordinary warrior. This was Takezo Kensei, the Sword Saint. Most versions of the tale describe a battle that lasted 11 days and nights. Kensei was said to have killed every last warrior, leaving alive only those wise enough to lay down their arms before him. At the end of the 11 days, the only men left standing were Kensei and Whitebeard himself. With scant records of the battle itself, we can only imagine the thunder in the clash of these two legendary swords. In the end, only Takezo Kensei remained. By defeating Whitebeard, he had rescued an entire country from tyrannical rule. His place in both history and legend was secure. Facing the 90 Ronin, slaying the Black Bear, defeating Whitebeard's army, it seemed that legend made Kensei a god among men. But even gods can be defeated and killed. Kensei was not invincible, his heart being his great weakness. He would eventually meet his end, as seen in his most famous tale, Kensei and the Dragon. Takezo Kensei. To save Japan, this legendary swordsman faced overwhelming odds and stood victorious. Fierce beasts, massive armies, even the primal elements could not stop him. But it was in his final story, Kensei and the Dragon, that Kensei would breathe his last. It was said that before Kensei began his trials, he met a beautiful princess. The two fell madly in love. But the princess, seeing the threat of Whitebeard, made Kensei swear to do everything in his power to save Japan.
Well, to prepare for battle, Kensei trained under the greatest swordsman of his time until he had bested all of his instructors. But he knew even this would not be enough.
Kensei sought out the dragon of Kisu Mountain. The dragon was rumored to possess knowledge of ancient and powerful sword skills, but it would only teach those who truly needed it. And even then, a terrible price would always be extracted.
The dragon agreed to help Kensei, finding his cause worthy. But in exchange, the dragon asked Kensei to give him that which he loved most in life. It is the classic conflict of the hero in love.
Kensei was torn. He loved the princess deeply, but he swore to her that he would do whatever he must to save Japan. Reluctantly, Kensei agreed. And so the dragon bestowed on him the full force of his sword knowledge, making him the Sword Saint. Kensei used his newfound skills to track and defeat Whitebeard. With the people out of harm's way, it was safe for our hero to live as a man. Kensei sought to marry his princess. She agreed.
Kensei's wedding was said to be the most beautiful in Japanese history. Cherry blossoms showered the bride and bridegroom, gifts piled higher than Mount Fuji. All of Japan celebrated.
But the couple's joy would prove to be all too brief. With a loud thunderclap, the dragon of Kisu Mountain suddenly appeared above the wedding. It was huge and terrible. It was said to have blotted out the sun across all Japan. The dragon demanded Kensei fulfill his side of the bargain. He demanded Kensei's love. He demanded the princess. Kensei was faced with an unthinkable choice. To honor his bargain, he would have to sacrifice the only thing he cared about. But, always clever and brave, Kensei surprised the dragon. He plunged his sword into his own chest and cut out his heart. He held out his heart to the dragon, saying, "My love is in here. Take it."
Kensei died in the arms of his princess. But he fulfilled his promise to her when he died. It is one of the best illustrations of self-sacrifice common to the classic hero myths worldwide. Well, in some versions of the story, Kensei is rewarded for his sacrifice. They say the dragon, so moved by his love and honor, put Kensei's heart back into his body, and with his fiery breath brought the samurai back to life.
No one knows exactly what happened to Kensei after this. His story as history ends here. But legend has offered him several ends.
Some claim he went on to live a long life with his princess, surrounded by more gold than the emperor. Other accounts suggest that Kensei and his bride departed with the dragon, never to be seen again.
Another, less optimistic version reveals Kensei's death as final, with the princess mourning her lost love for every day of a very long life. Many wondered just who was Kensei's love, this princess. Like Kensei himself, her characterizations in the tales are numerous and conflicting. A few go so far as to credit her as the creator of the Kensei tapestries, the earliest known record of Kensei, and the potential source of the rich oral tradition surrounding him.
No, not many people would agree with me about that. But of all the many versions of the trials, none predates the Kensei scroll paintings, and that makes this signature of vital importance. Yeiko, daughter of the sword maker. If she originated the tales, she may well have been his great love. Who else would know so intimately the details of his journey? Who else would be such a loving bard? Who else but his princess?
Well, that's wishful academic thinking. Granted, concurrent records confirm the existence of a woman named Yeiko from the village of Atsu, the only daughter of a much-admired swordsmith, but that confirms nothing. In such a male-dominated society, it's difficult to believe that she genuinely accomplished any of the amazing things attributed to the princess, or that a samurai, like Kensei, would ever allow a woman to accompany him on these dangerous quests. But yes, she did exist.
Yeiko's place in the Kensei tale only fortified his status as a figure of myth and legend. But with little proof and scant historical records, belief in Kensei's actual existence grew weaker. Many believed that Japan's greatest hero was little more than a folk tale. But recently, evidence was uncovered which would finally settle the debate, once and for all. For centuries, many believed that Takezo Kensei was not real, but rather simply a folk tale. While records do show that a Takezo Kensei existed during the alleged time of the trials of Kensei, few, if any, records can be found before or after. Curator Atsumi Tatsuya offers this explanation.
During this era, it was not uncommon for individuals to adopt new names, changing their identities. For example, in 1536, Toyotomi Hideyoshi was born to peasant parents, but he would rise to the rank of a general and then ruler. During this ascension, he created at least 2 sets of new names for himself. Some believe he did this to help cover his humble beginnings. It is doubtful that Takezo Kensei was our hero's birth name. Kensei translates to sword saint, a term given to only the most skillful and revered of warriors. No parents would actually name their child this. More likely, it was a name given to him.
But so little is known about Kensei before his trials. It is very possible that he had a past that he wanted to keep secret. Some tales do refer to a time when Kensei was far more savage. Long before he saved Japan, Kensei was said to be feared throughout the land for his short temper and great rage. Though possessing great skill, this Kensei was undisciplined and reckless. Legend has it that his sacred blade, the famed Kensei sword, gave him focus and calmed his wild temper.
Like its owner, little is actually known about the weapon's origin. Did he forge it himself? Was it a gift from the gods? Well, there are so many versions of this story. But the most common is he drew it from a field of solid ice.
Just like King Arthur and his Excalibur, Kensei was destined to draw the sacred sword to unify his country. But like its owner, it was widely believed that the sword was more legend than real.
With little evidence, doubt is cast upon either actually existing. Then in 1977, an exciting discovery. Daniel Lindemann, CEO and founder of the Lindemann Corporation, made the announcement that he had indisputable evidence of Kensei's existence. He had uncovered the actual Kensei sword. After exhaustive testing, it was confirmed. The sword was genuine. Takezo Kensei was indeed real. He had taken life. He had defended honor with this very blade.
Lindemann was said to have had the largest collection of Kensei artifacts in the world. But the Lindemann connection has really only added to the mystery. Recently, the sword was stolen from his private collection, shortly after Lindemann was found murdered in his own office.
Lindemann's killers were never found. Coincidence? Or are these events somehow connected? Lindemann had refused the Japanese government's request to return what were considered cultural treasures. Even when he loaned out his collection to museum tours, he never allowed the Kensei sword to travel, safeguarding it always in his private collection. Could someone have stolen back the sword and killed Lindemann to prevent retaliation? Or was Lindemann's death even more sinister?
Many believe that the Kensei sword was cursed, that it was not meant to be found. It had disappeared for hundreds of years, and it has vanished again, as it was meant to.
The world may never get all the answers on Takezo Kensei. It appears that he, his trials, his love, even his sword are destined to remain shrouded in mystery. But perhaps mystery is what grants any legend its enduring appeal.